Dion, thank you. Several Wisconsinites also making the trip to Washington, D.C., celebrating the inauguration despite that ceremony being moved indoors due to the weather. In a First Alert update, Drew Best joins us live in studio after connecting with some of those who made the trip out east. Drew.
Emerson, the people I spoke with from Northeast Wisconsin started their inauguration festivities over the weekend, attending events at bars and ballrooms to welcome President Donald Trump back to office. Green Bay native Dixon Wolf says although he wanted to see the inauguration happen in person, he, along with several others, are making the most of the experience in our nation's capital.
Ran into a couple from Green Bay in the crowd. They were waiting out since 2 in the morning the other day to get into the rally.
Dixon Wolf spent his election season knocking on doors for Donald Trump, even attending the RNC as a delegate representing Wisconsin's Republican Party. He now joins other Trump supporters in their Inauguration Day celebrations.
Everyone's gathering around, kind of making their own little watch parties to see the ceremony, and then everyone's going to events.
Wolf sending us photos with several notable figures he's been able to speak with in Washington, D.C., including former Wisconsin Attorney General Brad Schimmel and recently confirmed Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Another Wisconsin native, Catherine Dahlke, sending us photos from the Wisconsin over-the-top delegation meeting. She says the energy in Washington has been joyous.
Everyone has been friendly and patient, very generous with their time and spirit, just helping each other out, navigating the metro, navigating events. Secret Service, police have all been phenomenal. Everyone's excited about the opportunity to celebrate the inauguration.
Now that Trump has been sworn back into presidency, the Wisconsinites we spoke to are focusing conversations on what is next for the country under his leadership. Emerson.